All right, folks, welcome back. We are in our next segment of our 2026 International Symposium on Cooperative Identity and Energizing the Cooperative Brand. It's a pleasure to have folks back. We've had over 430 people from across the world, 56 countries, join in this week at some point. And so we're very lucky to have this online event. I want to pay my gratitudes to all of the speakers and researchers and practitioners who are bringing forward their ideas, as well as a big thank you to the Northwest Cooperative Development Center and .coop for their support as partners and sponsors, and also to Co-ops and Mutuals Canada, who are supporting this event and offering translation. So for anyone who does need translation, it's offered in 4 languages. You'll see something in the chat right now that has a link to your language. If you click on that, you will get voice to text translation. If it's helpful for folks to have transcript running, to be able to understand everything that's happening, there should be that option in your Zoom menu as well. Please treat this as our shared space. Do drop anything into the chat that you'd like other folks to see, your ideas, questions, links to things that you're doing. We want everyone to be able to use this as a place to convene and share. So our next session here is focused on new audiences, and I'd like to thank the speakers and invite Cathy Statz to introduce yourself and kick off our session.
Well, thank you so much, Erin. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm joining you incidentally from the National Senior Housing Cooperative Conference in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, where I'm helping out for the week, and thrilled to be able to be in 2 places at once. To be here in Minnesota with amazing seniors who are celebrating and learning about the cooperative model in their housing, and also part of this international audience that's exploring how we might bring the co-op message to folks who might be, starting out in their lives and their cooperative careers, or just simply in their understanding of cooperatives. Because as we know, people come to cooperatives at really all parts and points in their lives. And what a great privilege it is to be part of a space that introduces this great model to people, regardless of their background or their understanding. So we've got 2 great presenters today. I'm going to introduce each of them just before their session. So each session will be about 20 minutes in length. And at the conclusion of both sessions, we'll have some time for Q&A and some discussion. During that time, we'll both be monitoring questions in the chat. We'll also welcome folks to come off mute during that conclusion Q&A time to share their questions directly. So let's get started with our first presenter today, who is Aasa Marshall. Aasa works as Director of Communications with Co-operatives First. And as some of you may know, Co-ops First in Canada got started as a way to sort of react and respond to an awareness that co-ops were not always understood well, how they could be used. And so this presentation is going to talk a little bit about how they approach that space, how they reach some folks who, really could benefit from the co-op model, but maybe weren't real familiar, had a way to think about those structures and benefits through their current lenses. So we're really pleased that this background that Aasa brings has like a journalism perspective and public policy perspective. We know in co-ops there's so many ways we bring complex ideas and ways of viewing our challenges and opportunities to the space. So thinking about how to get that complex information out in simple, accessible ways is a real gift to have in our cooperative community. So Aasa spent a lot of time thinking about how do we share about how great co-ops are, a specific workshop for cooperatives first around communications for co-ops, and how to get clients to really think about how we create a communication strategy to share about this fabulous model. So with that, Aasa, we'll turn it over to you, and thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Cathy. Okay, I'll get my screen going here. Okay, everything working there for you guys? Looking good. Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Yes, as Cathy mentioned, I'm Aasa Marshall. I'm the Director of Communications for Cooperatives First. I've been at the organization not quite since the beginning, but I've been there for about 9 years now, and this year we're celebrating our 10th anniversary, so it's very exciting. Okay, so just over a decade ago, the Canadian Centre for the Study of Cooperatives at the University of Saskatchewan, our good friends,
They completed what was called the Cooperative Innovation Project, or CIP. It was a 2-year study that asked whether the co-op model was still feasible in rural and Indigenous communities in Western Canada. And if it was, why didn't we see the same number of co-ops being created that we used to? So the CIP project found that, yes, when people found out about the co-op model, they thought it was a great way to create local solutions. But the problem was not many people really knew what a co-op was anymore. In a survey, the study found that 23% of rural respondents and 41% of the Indigenous respondents answered no to the question, do you know what a cooperative is? So as a result of these findings, Federated Cooperatives Limited and the Cooperative Retailing System, which had commissioned the study, created Cooperatives First. So as a large federation of cooperative retail associations that operate across Western Canada, Federated Cooperatives Limited and the Cooperative Retailing System, they really believe in the co-op model and in its power to help communities thrive. So they created us to do 2 core things: to spread the word about what co-ops are and why they're so great, and to help people in Western Canada to start co-ops once they've recognized them as a good solution. And so this required us to try to reach people who had either never heard of a co-op or didn't understand how it worked, not those who already know about and love cooperatives. And we've been pretty successful. To date, we've helped create over 150 co-ops across Western Canada. So when we got started, there were some challenges that were apparent. We knew that understanding of co-ops was low in the general population because of the CIP findings. We also knew that the cooperative retailing system members across Western Canada were extremely popular and well-known. So they operate with a logo that just calls them co-op, and they are beloved local businesses in hundreds of communities that sell groceries, gas, agricultural inputs, building supplies, all sorts of things. And so this is wonderful, and they are the reason that many goods are even available at all in some rural communities. However, because of their popularity, it also had the effect of making a lot of people think that a co-op is a retail store that sells goods, but not a business model that can be used much more widely. So most people don't realize that a cooperative is a business structure that can be used to meet almost any goal. And if they didn't confuse cooperatives with the co-op, they might confuse it with the co-operators, which is a widely known provider of insurance and financial services. So while introducing a new idea can be a challenge, changing a long-held understanding is even more difficult. So when we entered the co-op space, another thing we found was the way co-ops were talked about could sometimes be a barrier. Sometimes co-ops were presented as something other than a business, that there were businesses and there were co-ops, but that these were 2 different things. And when presenting this information to new people, that framing was confusing as they tried to conceptualize what this other thing was. So with these things in mind, we knew that to reach new audiences, we not only had to find new people, we had to find new ways to talk about cooperatives to get that message across. Okay. So our approach, the first thing we recognized was that we really needed to use simple, plain language. So we were created out of an academic study, and so it took some time to shift the way we spoke about things as well. We had to shake off the jargon a little bit and focus on speaking to a really broad lay audience. In early events we attended, we would see presenters lead into a talk about co-ops by introducing them with the ICA definition, which I'm sure everyone here is really familiar with. That up here. And so while this well-known and well-loved definition it's very accurate, it covers all the bases. But in our experience, when new people were confronted with this definition, it caused some puzzled looks. It was a little hard to absorb if you didn't already know what a co-op was. And so when reading this for the first time, it's easy to maybe believe that this doesn't or can't apply to you. So we decided that we weren't going to use this definition for new people. We started talking about co-ops with a definition more like this one. This one isn't set in stone by any means. We may change it based on who we're talking to. but it represents how we try to explain what a co-op is in a way people can more easily envision applying to your own ideas. So our definition is more along the lines of a co-op is a business or organization owned by a group of people with a shared goal who make decisions together and share in its profits. And so instead of autonomous association of persons, we'll just say group. Instead of enterprise, we'll say business or organization. So of course, we go on to explain the model further, but this is more of a starting point for people who are hearing about a co-op for the very first time. In our first campaign as an organization, we encouraged people to consider a co-op, and we described it as a different and sometimes better way to do business. It was enough to get people asking questions and wanting to know more. We did another campaign recently to promote co-ops as a solution to childcare shortages, which there is a lot of in Western Canada. We wanted parents and community leaders to know that they could take the problem into their own hands by starting a cooperative. And so this campaign also had a very straightforward message: create your own space, start a childcare co-op. So I really want to emphasize that using simple, plain language is not about dumbing things down, which is sometimes people can interpret that as. Everyone has different vocabularies and experience, and using plain, straightforward language is about reaching the widest swath of people possible by using words that are easy for everyone to process, meeting people where they are with a message that can benefit them. Because if people don't understand what a co-op is, they'll never build one. So if you want to reach new people, of course, you don't just need to speak in new ways, you need to look in new places. And so something we've done very intentionally from the beginning is reach out to and build relationships with professionals in the economic development sector. The economic development officers in communities across the country are there to strengthen their local economies. And it's obviously very useful if they understand what a co-op is, so they can recognize when it might be a good fit in a given situation and recommend it to people who would benefit from it. And while you might expect that this audience would already be very familiar with all the available business models, often we found that they weren't. Most business development firms or organizations would tell potential clients that they have three choices when it comes to structuring a business. They can do it as a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation, and that the other option might be a nonprofit organization. But we found rarely were co-ops in the conversation. So we were on a mission to change that. We still are. That's something that we want to work towards every day. So in the early days, we spent a lot of time going to different events hosted by economic development agencies with our Consider a Co-op banner, talking to them about what a co-op is and how people in their communities could use them. And this message really resonated. The idea of people being able to take problems of their local economy into their own hands was something economic development professionals could really get on board with. The approach has paid off in big ways. Economic development officers in our communities across the region have not only learned about and spread the word about co-ops, but many of them have been actively involved in starting co-ops themselves. And so now economic development associations across Western Canada have actually certified Cooperatives First online courses so that economic development officers who take them can get points towards their professional accreditation. So that really encourages them to learn more about co-ops. Because of our mandate, this audience was a key and obvious one for us from the beginning. But think about who your new audience might be. Like, who do you think you would like to reach with a message about co-ops? Who would benefit from knowing more about them? Where are they and what's the best way to reach them? So stories help people make sense of things. They bring abstract concepts into reality. A story saves people from having to burn too many mental calories trying to figure out what the message is and why it's important to them and their goals. So while we have a lot of technical expertise and we can explain the ins and outs of how a co-op works, but it's much more effective to show people than to try to just tell them. In the early days, we created a series called the Backroad Diaries, where we hired summer students to travel around Western Canada to visit co-ops and make short videos telling their stories and the impact they had on their communities. So COVID kept us from continuing this project for a while, but we are reviving it for the first time this year. But since we did this, we have also shifted to visiting co-ops that are our clients that we've helped to create and making videos about them as well. So I have a short video that I'd like to show you. This is the most recent one that we've created, and this is about a co-op on Vancouver Island.
In June of 2023, 3 friends in Souk, BC were sitting at their favorite cafe and got some bad news. The cafe was going to close down. They quickly came up with a solution.
The owner of the coffee shop, the Stick in the Mud, had created such an amazing place. And when he needed to move on and it was up for sale, and then there were no takers, we heard that it was closing and we just couldn't let that happen.
The group took a unique approach. They started an investment co-op called the Souk Community Investment Cooperative, where residents could invest by purchasing shares, which allowed the co-op to buy the cafe and keep it running.
Finances was the biggest challenge of all. We were trying to raise $100,000 in a month or two. I spent a lot of time tapping people on the shoulder and saying, the coffee shop is closing, we're starting a co-op, would you like to be a member? And we got an amazing result.
For community members, this cafe was special and worth preserving.
It can be hard to meet people here because small town, everyone went to school together, and if you're new, it's hard to break into those social circles. But here you sort of grab a table and a cup of coffee and start meeting people very quickly.
It's the heart of Souk. It's honestly, it's smack dab in the middle. It's easy to come and enjoy a good breakfast, good community, good conversation.
This is how I found out about Souk, coming here. And it got me involved in the community. I'm grateful for that. I think about my son was in a near fatal accident, and my husband and I came back from the hospital. This is the first place we came. It's like cheers. Everybody knows you, you know? I can get a hug here.
So what does it take to start a co-op like this one?
You need passion and you need community. I was reluctant to take on the role as president because I don't feel that I have the necessary skills. I'm not a business person. I know nothing about business. There's someone in the community who cares that has those skills, and you have to find them and draw them out. And if you have the passion, you can make it happen.
In June of 2023,
Trying to get to the next slide. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay. So a note also in the storytelling realm about how we frame things. So one thing we've learned in the storytelling process is not to position ourselves as the hero of the story. This is outlined in a great book. It's called Building a Story Brand, if you're interested in the whole framework. But the big takeaway for us was to frame the audience that you're speaking to as the hero who's trying to reach a goal. So we, on the other hand, at Cooperatives First, we're the helpful guide, providing our audience with the information and support they need to achieve success, whatever that looks like for them. So we position co-ops in the same way. Cooperatives aren't a savior that swoops in to save the day and solve people's problems. A co-op is a tool people can use to solve their problems themselves. So the people of Souk are the heroes, not co-ops, not Cooperatives First. We just helped a group of hardworking, dedicated people to create a solution that has a big impact on their community. And so that's how we tell the story, to try to inspire others to do the same. So I feel the next one might be a little controversial with this audience that loves co-ops and who know and love the co-op principles. But one of the conscious decisions we've made over the years is not to lead our discussions about co-ops by telling people about the co-op values and principles. And so we know that for a lot of people, obviously these are really important defining characteristics of co-ops, and that's great. We've found that explaining co-ops to people in terms of the 7 principles can confuse new audiences. It might make them feel like a co-op isn't the right fit for them, even when it very much could be. And so many of the people we've helped to start co-ops are looking for practical solutions. They're not necessarily motivated by these types of principles. So we tend to tell people that any co-op can choose to use the principles as guidelines. For the most part, the first 4 principles are outlined in legislation, and we help people understand these. There can be confusion among new people who wonder that if they cease to be a cooperative if they don't adhere to all 7. In this way, the principles can feel a little exclusionary. They can turn people off of the model, even though otherwise it would be extremely useful to them. So we explain the co-op structure as clearly as we can, but we tell people who wonder that it isn't our place to tell folks what their values and principles should be. And this is something that our Director of Indigenous Relations pointed out to us really early on, that it's inappropriate to try to impose values and principles onto Indigenous groups that are seeking to start cooperatives. And so we adopted this view a little more broadly. We just choose them not to put them front and center when helping people to get their co-op set up. So we help people understand co-ops in the ways I've outlined above, using a simple explanation, walking folks step by step through the incorporation and startup process, and letting them see for themselves how useful and relevant the model can be. And so that's our little framework, I guess. That's how at Cooperatives First, we've approached meeting our goal of getting the word out about co-ops to new people who would benefit from this very versatile and useful model. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much, Aasa. What great examples. Really some meaty stuff for us to think about and dig into in the ways that we approach this work a little bit differently. Thank you so much for that, and I look forward to some good questions after our next presenter. So in my current work, which is a little bit of outreach with the International Center for Cooperative Management, with the Cooperative Development Foundation in the US, and with the National Cooperative Business Association, I'm really interested in that way that we bring the stories of cooperatives to life for folks who might be already in our cooperatives or are just learning about them. And this next speaker, Stan, is going to talk about a topic that's really near and dear to me, having personally been someone who grew up learning about cooperatives in a summer camp program in the States through the Farmers Union. So this is a space that's sort of always been present in my life and in my mind, having grown up on a dairy farm in South Central Wisconsin, and having attended a summer camp program that taught not just about the notion of working together cooperatively, but literally about how co-ops work, their history, their principles, their structures, in fun and fascinating ways. And then I led that program for 30 years. So I'm really excited now to bring Stan into the conversation. Stan does research and communications as a coordinator with the Canadian Center for the Study of Cooperatives, and was curious about this idea of the cooperative youth programs in the Canadian provincial co-op associations, right? And sort of lots, and similar to my experience in the States, lots of sort of anecdotal evidence around the folks who've grown up in these programs, going on to be interested in and connected to the co-op model. But where are the facts here, right? So we're excited to get a sense of that from the work that Stan did to actually research some of those alums and see what they had to say and how they felt about their experiences. So Stan, we'll turn it over to you, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Cathy. Thank you very much for the warm welcome, and thank you to the International Center for Cooperative Management for having us. I'm really excited to talk about these co-op summer youth programs in Canada, the research that we've done, and also too, I want to say and commend all of the speakers over the past couple of days. I've caught most of the talks and have just been really energized and excited by all of the conversation in terms of how we can elevate the visibility of cooperatives and bring awareness to more folks across the world. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen here. And I think that where I come in to the conversation, I'm glad that Aasa started the conversation I wrote down from her talk that it's really about drawing new people in, how to bring them in. ASA through cooperatives, the great work of Cooperatives First, their use of stories, their use of plain language, their use of meeting folks where they are is a fabulous way of bringing in new audiences that might not be so well versed with the cooperative principles, values, as everyone on this call is. And kind of looking at some of the core ingredients there of what Asa mentioned, looking at messaging, looking at how to frame cooperatives, how to frame stories, how to connect cooperatives to individuals. I like to bring in the perspective of youth and using cooperative education as a way of drawing youth in. I don't know about other international jurisdictions, but in Canada, cooperatives are not taught within schools, neither in the primary, secondary, or post-secondary programs. And so as a sector, we're very much behind the starting line in terms of people's awareness about cooperatives, because people have to learn about cooperatives on their own, whether it is through family, their community, through experience, through generations of family and friends being part of cooperatives. That was once a norm in Western Canada. Now that has become less and less so. And so opportunities to learn about cooperatives are very individualized and subsequently quite variable. However, there is a program that has existed across Canada in certain provinces for decades, and that is cooperative summer camps. And there have been, through cooperative associations, other educational programs aimed directly at youth to teach them about cooperatives. And I'm going to talk a bit more about those programs and the research that we did this past year on those programs. A little bit about us as a center for folks who are new to us and may not have heard of our center before. We're the Canadian Center for the Study of Cooperatives. We're located in Western Canada here, and we are an interdisciplinary research center that aims to provide cooperative sector policymakers and researchers with data, conceptual tools, and practical analysis to understand cooperative organizations and initiatives, and to develop them as solutions to our social and economic needs. As the name goes, our jurisdiction is primarily national, but certainly we look across internationally as well to learn as well as contribute to national conversations through what we have learned through our research here. So about the camps themselves, Cathy gave a great introduction already. Essentially, these summer camps have been offered for decades in multiple provinces in Canada. They typically entail a week-long retreat to a remote location that then subsequently a group of about 30 to 40 youth engage in experiential learning programs. There are summer activities, outdoor activities, also opportunities to learn about public speaking, engage in public speaking, make friends, and also learn about co-ops and cooperative values and principles throughout that week. Typically, these camps start in the early teens, and then there are iterations of camps all the way until the youth is about 18. As I mentioned, these have been offered through decades in certain provinces. In my province of Saskatchewan, it was offered for over 90 years. I'll talk about why it was in a second. 63 years in Alberta, one province west of us, and then Ontario, the biggest province in Canada, 56 years and ongoing. Like Cathy mentioned, we, over the years at the center, have heard considerable anecdotal evidence via testimonials, videos, awards, news stories of cooperative leaders in Canada that credit their start as a lifelong cooperator through these camps. And the curiosity that was piqued in me, and I should mention that I don't come from a co-op camp program, was I wanted to see, how many other Cathy Statz are there out in the world. We know that, through these anecdotal evidence, there are a few, and we wanted to see how many were there out there. As also too, we know that there are a spectrum of co-op champions and co-op leaders. There are folks that, become CEOs of large cooperatives or are the board chairs of cooperatives, but there are others that just shop at a cooperative and make a goal of supporting cooperatives within their communities, within their daily lives. That matters as well too. That demonstrates a lifelong engagement, championing, supporting of and engagement of cooperatives. We want to see, with all the different spectrums of how you can engage, where do people fall within that, and how many are there that have gone through these camps and now following up with them today, even if it's 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, that they might still express this type of engagement and support. We're also seeing at this point in time within Canada, these camps are also undergoing a point of uncertainty, a period of uncertainty in Saskatchewan due to competing competition with other types of interest camps, some divestments from large cooperatives historically, that the camp subsequently has been put on hold indefinitely. In Alberta, a similar situation, one province over, a similar situation happened until this year, where a large cooperative helped to reinvigorate the camp, and it is offered again this summer. So within that period of uncertainty, we also wanted to participate and engage in this conversation to see, the impact that these camps have had on alumni of camps over the years. Finally, the additional context that we have here is within another survey that our center has administers on a yearly basis. We find that awareness amongst cooperatives continues to be the top co-op issue expressed by co-op leaders across Canada, with youth, the low awareness of youth being specifically mentioned as a challenge. So we would kind of want to contribute to that conversation as well too. So essentially, the project, the research project's goals were twofold: to assess the extent to which alumni of these camp programs currently engage with the cooperative sector within their professional and personal lives, and subsequently, can we say anything about the awareness of the cooperative model that has been generated from these programs, and what is their kind of perceived long-term impact of the program that they participated in? So we partnered with cooperative youth programs across Canada. There was an online survey that was distributed last year, and we received 312 respondents to the survey. Now, we fully acknowledge that this is only a drop in the bucket of campers that have, since these programs are so long-standing. Unfortunately, during the data collection period, we realized that a lot of the programs that offer these camps over the years, membership database kind of compilation and management became increasingly challenging, and they just didn't have the capacity to have a good grasp on their alumni database. Subsequently, because of these challenges, we had to do more of a snowball sampling, where we did a mixture of social media campaigns, newsletters, mailing lists. Some were more complete than others, and we saw 312 respondents. We would have loved to see more, but it's the start of the conversation. Within the demographics, essentially, we saw a pretty healthy distribution across camps. One particular camp program had less, but overall, we were quite pleased with the distribution. And typically, we saw that most of our respondents who participated in the survey participated in camp after the year 2000. So it's like millennials and some younger millennials. Again, we fully acknowledge that sample size and self-selection bias can play factors here in some of our findings, and here are the findings. So essentially, we'll start with the professional engagement. When asked the 312 alumni, do they currently work at a cooperative or credit union? We found that close to a fifth currently do, so 18%. However, when we ask if alums have ever worked at a credit union or cooperative in the past or currently, we found that 41% have worked in one or more cooperative or credit union over the course of their lives. In terms of professional engagement, we also asked about serving on committees and boards of directors for a cooperative or credit union. And here we found that about a fourth of alums have served on a committee or board of a cooperative. With regards to the years of service, we saw an average about 8 years that they have served on a board or a committee. So very committed. On the personal engagement side, we also asked alums to what extent do they consume the goods and services that one can commonly find from cooperatives. Here we tailored our list of goods and services by the province and whether those goods and services can be readily found in those provinces in comparison to corporations. And we found that, as an example, banking, we found that for alumni, half of the 312 alums primarily bank at a credit union, which is pretty strong numbers in comparison to the general population. We're also very interested in asking them how many co-ops they are members of. And we found here that 60% were members of 2 or more cooperatives currently. In comparison to some of the recent research that have been conducted in Canada, in one where Cooperatives and Mutuals Canada found that about a third of the general population in Canada were members of one cooperative. Our center also did a national opinion poll this past year asking Canadians if they were a member of a cooperative. We also found that about a third were members of one cooperative. And it is noteworthy to see that in comparison, 60% of Co-op Camp alumni are members of 2 or more cooperatives. Take another example with regards to groceries. When we ask alumni to what extent do they purchase groceries at a cooperative, how frequently do they purchase groceries at a cooperative, we found that a bit of a mixed bag in terms of a range of some saying very little, a third saying some, and close to a third saying most to all. While this particular finding seems a bit lukewarm, once we delved into the data a bit more, we found that geography, in other words, access, played a big factor. Just under 50% of alumni from provinces that had groceries readily available said that they purchased groceries from a cooperative most or all of the time. We also did an evaluation of the skills learned at camp, and we found that resounding numbers in terms of positive feedback. As you can see here, high numbers across the board in terms of the skills that were gained, ranging from leadership skills to communication skills, to even 88% said that it was effective in learning about the cooperative model. In terms of the long-term impact of these camps, As you can see, majority of folks said that camp inspired them to pursue leadership roles. A majority also said that camp influenced their career path, and about half said that camp influenced their education path in some way, shape, or form. So our main takeaways from this research is as follows. We found that these camps do help alum to learn about the cooperative model. It does have an impact on alumni's career and education paths. They do engage with the cooperative sector as members, consumers, employees, and leaders. And the feedback for these programs by alumni have been very positive. In terms of looking at the cooperative branding, as we were conceptualizing kind of the main takeaways, we've been very inspired by the need for broad scale marketing and elevating of visibility across the sector internationally. We also just want to ensure that the sector doesn't forget about marketing through grassroots efforts like camp. We've seen through this research that there has been a notable impact, and there has been demonstrated engagement with the sector. Knowing that these camps with thousands of alumni, we do wonder how many others out there continue to amplify this type of engagement. And that investment in these camps is a way for the cooperative sector to invest in the future and to draw new audiences in through youth education. And our hypothesis is that once youth receive an introduction to the cooperative model, then subsequently every additional experience to the cooperative sector, to the cooperative movement, can then build on and amplify and help them to blossom to become cooperative leaders and champions in the future. So that's all the time I have. I'll put my contact information in the chat, as well as the link to the full report. If you have any questions, I look forward to receiving them. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Stan. It's so interesting for me as the product of one of those programs, at least in the US, to see the numbers, because for a long time we just we sort of do it. We didn't ever have a great way to capture it. So I'm guessing that our numbers would be similar in the US, but it's a great way to tell the story and to also show the impact, right, and demonstrate that it is worth it. So we're so pleased now to have some time for questions before we transition to the top of the hour's next session. I'll just check and see if there's questions from the chat, Aaron, that you want to bring any attention to. Otherwise, I have a few things we can start with. Folks are also welcome to just come off mute and ask their question at this time.
I think it would be great to have a few more voices in the room. There have been some things coming up in the chat, and some things have been resolved among the group. but do folks want to unmute themselves and join the conversation?
Alicia, I know you had a couple things come up in the chat. Maybe we'll start with you. I see your hand is raised as well. Go ahead, Alicia.
Yeah. So Cathy, it's interesting to me that you're saying that there are these camps in the US too. I've never actually heard of them. Like, it seems like in Canada they're much more common. And I do quite a bit of work in the credit union space, and also been aware of some of the food cooperatives. And what I've noticed is that when people are doing philanthropy, they almost always need to put their money toward a business objective, specifically toward people who could be members in their community or whatnot. Or they give it to a cause like, food sovereignty or something if they're in the food sector. And so it's interesting that in Canada, it seems like there's a lot more philanthropy focused on the sector, on building the sector as a whole, the cooperative sector, as opposed to an industry sector. And I was just wondering why that is, and if it's possible to, get learnings that could then transfer to places like the US or other countries.
Well, I'll let the two speakers respond to that, but I'll preface it by saying, wouldn't it be nice to have a co-op secretariat in the federal government in the US? We don't have that, and they do in Canada. So that's a starting point, right, to be recognized federally from a policy standpoint. But there's more to say there, I'm sure, because I know that may not be perfect either. Stan, I'm happy to have you chime in.
Well, thank you very much for the question, Alicia. That's a very interesting question that I have yet to ponder. Now, that being said, both my center and ASA's organization are funded by cooperatives across Canada. So, in that sense, I think I may have just supported your point. In addition to the camps, unfortunately, I don't know enough about the US situation to have a comparative analysis, but you've given me a lot of food for thought. I can definitely already picture some anecdotal examples, just like the ones I just gave, that demonstrate that co-ops here in Canada do and have and continue to support the growth of the sector through co-op education, through concern for community. I don't. Yeah, I would love to sink my teeth into that question a bit more, but unfortunately, that's all I know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can speak to the camps necessarily, but I mean, youth is a great new audience that you're right, introducing the concept of co-ops early. I think, especially I think Gen Z and I think younger people are looking for new ways to do things. And I think they get excited when they hear about being able to do things as a co-op, as something they haven't thought about before. So I would just say, I agree that it would be great to see more of that.
Thanks, Alicia. That's a great question. And you and I can always follow up on some of the U.S. context. I mean, the Farmers Union organization is a membership organization, and so those camps were marketed to our members and to the general public. But to some degree, it was constrained by the fact that our messaging was sort of to whoever we could get to as modestly resourced organizations running summer camps that were far less expensive than some of our sort of other camp industry, counterparts. So that was part of it. I see a hand up with Olawale. Would you like to come off mute and share your question? If you're able. There we are. Go ahead.
Oh, good day. Can you hear me?
Yes, please continue.
Oh, thank you. My name is Olawale Samuel Yoda. I'm currently working with Lagos Nasi Cooperative Multipurpose. It's a BMO cooperative, actually meant for entrepreneurs and business owners. My question is this. I love this program, and it's laudable. Like you mentioned, how can we, especially in this part of the world, also participate in this youth camp? Is it open for Africa, number one? Yeah. Then if it's open for Africa, how can they participate? But if not, how can we replicate this kind of program? Are we able to catch all this the Gen Zs at a younger age to be incorporated in cooperative? Thank you.
Oh, Wally, thank you very much for your question. While I don't run these programs as part of my work, my understanding is that it's pretty localized. So they aim to engage youth within kind of their immediate surroundings, immediate communities. So unfortunately not offered internationally or for international participants. However, I do think that the ingredients for those youth programs can be applied and adapted in other jurisdictions as well too. Certainly if you're interested in looking at developing some of these programs in Lagos, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you to some of the masterminds here in Canada that have designed these programs, and they have been operating for many years, and they know it well.
Yeah, I would just add to that in the context of the farmers union camps in the States, because folks do pay a modest registration fee. It's heavily subsidized, of course, but if an attendee could get there, they'd be welcome to register. We often had campers from states other than the state of Wisconsin attend our Wisconsin camps, for example. So I think it's going to depend on the organization and their proximity to transportation and airports and all of that. But again, to echo Stan's point, I think an even greater efficiency might be gained by figuring out how we replicate some of these kinds of programs. And for example, it would be interesting to see in the African context, the credit unions who already, often are interested in sort of the development education perspective, if you know the DE program in the credit union context, to see if they might apply that notion of, sort of education and outreach to a sort of youth cooperative literacy perspective, not just around financial literacy, but cooperative literacy. You might find that you could actually motivate, right, some interest in bringing those very youth-specific programs into places where there's already a good infrastructure of folks passionate about the model. And thank you, Erin, for sharing the link to the DE program there. Aasa, you want to have anything you want to add to that? I mean, it was a little bit youth-specific, but I think the idea of bringing programs right to new spaces applies to every age.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I can't speak to how to set that up, but I love the idea of, taking an idea that you've seen somewhere and applying it to a new context and a new group of people. I think that would be fantastic.
And I'll also quickly add to through our correspondence with some credit union leaders in Indonesia. In Indonesia, their credit unions have also taken on the responsibility of working with folks to develop new co-ops. So if that sounds familiar to you, it almost sounds like they're taking on the Cooperatives First role within credit unions. They have like a sub group of individuals that just work on what they call spin out of using the credit union to first plant seed funding, and then subsequently the organization grows and then creates it becomes self-sustainable. Pretty cool. There are some common ingredients here, but the players and the approaches might just be adjusted based on what can be leveraged within the international jurisdiction.
So I do see a question from Ken. Maybe I'll just read it in light of, we just have a few minutes left, but it was around, for you, Aasa, knowing that you approach the principles in a little bit different way, where do you actually, introduce and discuss them? So kind of how does that play out in your programming?
Yeah. So I feel like we have an online free course that's available to anybody called Introduction to Cooperatives. And we do have a video in there that introduces the fact that there are these 7 principles. A lot of people like to use them. I think we also recognize that, like, as I was kind of mentioning, a lot of them are sort of embedded in co-ops anyway. So, I mean, a lot of like the first 4, we talk about when we're helping people set up the democracy, 1 member, 1 vote part. Obviously, we teach them about that. Those principles are kind of embedded, and I find that, like, care for community as well. Most of our clients are starting co-ops because they deeply care for their community, and the whole point of the co-op is to strengthen their community, whether that's with investment co-ops or childcare, or, like you said, saving local businesses. We have a lot of clients doing things like that. The ones that I think maybe trip people up are the education and co-ops supporting other co-ops, because they might often, a lot of our clients are in really small communities where there might not be a big network of cooperatives there. And so they might think, well, if we're not doing these 2 things, are we still a cooperative? And of course they are legally incorporated as one. And so I think that's why they're just not central to what we do, because we are talking about the ones that are key to people running co-ops as we're teaching them how to start them. But we don't want to make people feel like they're missing out on something if they're maybe not completely capturing all 7. But we also have a lot of co-ops who love and embrace them and use those as their frameworks, and others who maybe come up with their own set of principles and values that are equally valid, but maybe just don't quite align with exactly what the 7 ICA ones outline. So yeah, they're in there, but maybe just not spelled out as explicitly as they are in some other contexts. But I don't know. I hope that answers your question, Ken.
I hope so, Ken. I hope that captured it for you. I mean, I think, I sometimes, will still use the ICA definition. I often will use the ICA definition and maybe the USDA definition in the States, which is, the same folks who, are the users can own, control, and benefit, right? Just those 3 components. But when I use the ICA definition, sometimes I'll literally break it down sort of phrase by phrase, word by word. And what I sort of love about doing it that way is that when you arrange the definition in that way, you find that the enterprise is the last word of the definition, and it's at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And what is at the top? The people. And it makes a kind of beautiful symbol, right? So what I love is that we have so many different ways that we can, use pieces that's still in harmony with what we're about, and also shape them to meet the needs of the communities and audiences that we're working with.
Exactly.
Let's see. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from the group here? And also kind of scroll through to see. I know Erin's kind of keeping an eye on it as well.
I had something that I actually thought people might want to know. Unless you want to keep going, because I know I already spoke.
I think go ahead if it's brief, because we just have a minute or 2.
Okay. So I just facilitated a session for CEOs of credit unions. And the number one thing that they wanted to talk about was how to bring in youth. And so then I interviewed youth that we know to see, well, what are they looking for in a credit union? And almost across the board, they said, we're struggling, and we need, like, the first thing is not community. The first thing is this a good financial choice? And so then I talked to some of the CEOs who are actually succeeding at this event. And what I found is that it wasn't actually that hard to bring in youth. Like the ones who are succeeding have a great financial product that youth want. So maybe they're partnering with a university and they're offering a credit card, through that university. And it's hard for students to get credit cards, and they're trying to build their credit score. So that's just an example of people are struggling economically. They need a good solution. If you can find that solution, partner with someone who has access to that market, it's not that hard to break in.
And that's a great point that Tom Webb brought up earlier in the chat, right? Is, what's the problem that needs a solution? And for some people, that will speak most strongly. And others will want to be inspired by an idea, right? And then think about the ways in which that inspiration might play out. So that's why sometimes I think this education space can be so hard to get our heads around. I often talk about, what are those 3 words in the ICA definition, right? Why do we have information, training, and education? Like, why is that a separate 3rd word, right? And so I talk about sometimes, the information being the facts and figures, the training being the how we go about it, but education is the why. And, pulling that all together may resonate differently for different audiences. We're at the top of the hour. What a fantastic conversation this has been. Thank you all for your great discussion, presenters for your great preparation and sessions. And I'm going to turn things over to Tom Ivy for our next session. And thank you all.